I'm one of this huge bunch of carers that Anne-Marie's described. They used to say that as the population of rats in the sewers increased, that you were never more than 12 foot from a rat. And I guess as the population of carers increases, you can probably put a figure on that as well. I've got a particular perspective on caring because I'm the carer of somebody with a learning disability. So that isn't a temporary commitment, it's a lifelong commitment. My daughter's never going to get better. If anything, the opposite. And her needs will increase just as I'm getting older. And we will have no change in our role until either she dies or we do. So that brings with it a whole set of extra commitments, really. Before I leave the learning disability bit, there was a very good NHS England study in Kirklees about learning disability carers, and that estimated that in 2019 it would cost just under £166 million a year to replace the care provided by carers of adults with a learning disability in Kirklees. So a vast amount. And I suppose what it pinpoints is that carers are in many ways the biggest single element of the entire health and social care workforce, a very big player. And so it's worth looking after carers because without their efforts, the system may well collapse. So enough of that bit. Let me describe my daughter. She's called Sarah. She's coming up to be 35 next month. She has Down syndrome, ADHD and asthma. We adopted her when she was 18 months old and she'd had a major heart operation, and she came to join our family and so acquired 3 brothers. She's feisty, she's outgoing, she's very funny, she has a brilliant memory for people, and she's an ideal PA because she can look at the diary at the beginning of a week and prompt you for the whole of the rest of the week about where you should be and what you should be doing. She's always been a very physically active person. She's been a Special Olympics gymnast. She still does horse riding. And she loves anything that's really scary. So she'll certainly love Halloween coming up. She loves fairground rides, the scarier the better. She loves singing and has huge volume and absolutely no talent at that. And the other thing she excels at is swearing, and we've no idea where that came from because we're not a swearing family, but it's one of her features. The impact of her learning disability on her is that she has difficulty in processing information and requests, especially if they're coming fast. And if in doubt, she just becomes stubborn and then becomes challenging. That's just her way of dealing with it. That's her defense mechanism. And when replying to questions, she'll often aim for the most obvious answer. So we've got used to the idea that we have to check with her that what she said is what she actually meant to say. But 2 generations ago, she would have probably lived her life in an institution. She would have been one of those shuffling down the main corridor in the Stalls Hall. She would have died before us because of a heart condition that's part of Downs. So we would have been able to just kind of carry on our life. Now, because of the advances in medical science, we've had to pay proper attention to a long-term plan for her because she's likely to outlive us. And 6 years ago, we, along with other parents, we created a supported living setting in Murfield for her to move into with 3 others. And it's close to home, but it's independent of us. Sadly, another Down syndrome problem has begun to cut across everything, and she's on the edge of early onset dementia. It's a cruel twist for somebody who has built up so many skills over the years. But as with everything else, we just have to live with that and make whatever sense of it we can. Her impact on us as a family has been hugely positive. All of us as a family have learned a lot more about disability. We've been introduced to the wider learning disability family and have got a great deal of joy from that. The negative side is that as carers, there's constant pressures about explaining her behaviour to others. We understand what she's doing. to strangers, sometimes she can look a bit bizarre, and that can be a bit wearing, really, when you just have to regularly explain what's going on. A very practical one, there's a vast array of assessments and form filling. Every form seems to be at least 30 pages long, and you fill it in as a carer, knowing that if you get it right, you'll get reasonable support, and if you get it wrong, you'll have to live with the consequences of that for a long time. So you're always very conscious of trying to get it as best as you can. But those assessments and things are often very repetitive, and they are an additional burden. Like other people of her kind, Sarah's on benefits, and the demonisation of people on benefits affects her and it affects us, and that's another pressure. There's no getting away from the fact that although she's introduced a lot into our lives, she does constrain our family activity to some degree. We have to be very well organised, and it's sometimes difficult to latch into what other people are doing if you haven't got ahead of events. So as a family, there's times when we felt a bit isolated from what's going on. All the way through, we're haunted by the thought of who will care for her when we're no longer there to shout the odds. And we've been very fortunate up to now, but that always is in the back of your mind, that even now we still have to shout the odds for her at times. Who will do that when we're gone? And there's no getting away from the fact that you get increasingly worn down over time. Even if the demands of caring don't increase, our resilience has suffered, and additional support becomes not a bonus but a necessity. It's the only way to get through, because after 30 years you do begin to lose the oomph that allows you to do it. So just some final messages about what professionals could do differently that would make things easier for us as carers. First, acknowledge and make use of our expertise in terms of our daughter. We just had a brilliant experience of a person-led assessment, and we prepared for that by putting down on paper our view of Sarah and her needs. And the social worker accepted that and worked from it, challenged it, and that was fine, and added to it. But we've had the experience in the past where that hasn't been the case, and it's been an uphill struggle to get our voice heard in that. Secondly, note that we are carers, mark it down in your system. Even now, I think if I went down to our GP surgery, there'll be nothing to indicate that Liz and I are carers. And that's important because, as Anne-Marie has hinted at, carers suffer in terms of their physical and their mental well-being. And it's important for health professionals to spot that one of the reasons for that could be that you're a carer. So look out for that. Make it inevitable in your system that people notice that a carer is a carer. Number 3, involve us as planners, as partners in planning for health and support needs. We've had some dreadful experience of professionals wanting to sideline us. The worst being a smear test that they insisted that Sarah needed, and which really should have been recorded as a prime example of how not to do it. We've also had brilliant examples of, for instance, a CT scan a month ago, where the radiographer wanted to know what would make it easier for Sarah, accepted what we were saying, and the whole thing went brilliantly. So that's just one of those little subtleties. Number 4, and I know this is a difficult one, offer continuity. Sarah likes relationships. She likes to know the person she's with, and she hates having to start from scratch all the time. And it makes a huge difference to her to see the same person twice. Now, I know because of the way organisations work, that's sometimes difficult to guarantee, but if it's possible, it really does make a difference. Number 5, don't wait until a crisis happens before you offer support. Apart from anything else, it will probably involve a lot more cost if it's a crisis. And I think you have to trust that if carers are shouting, that it's because they really are getting to that point and they're not just crying wolf. Number 6, be aware of the fact that as a professional, you have perceived power. I think regardless of discussions, very often an assessment is described as a conversation. A conversation is between two people with equal power, and it doesn't always feel like that because the professional who's doing the assessment has the power to make life easier for you or more difficult as a result of what they decide. And that can affect how carers relate to you. Number 7, sorry, there's only 2 more. Number 7, don't force us to become stroppy and unreasonable in order to get what she needs. Most carers start off in Mother Teresa mode and end up in Donald Trump mode. And that's simply because it becomes necessary in some circumstances to shout. It seems to be the only way that you can get what you need. And lastly, get it right for her and you get it right for us. If Sarah's getting the right support, then the burden on us is just that little bit lighter and easier to carry, and we can keep going. Okay.